Hello, good morning. Welcome to the Sunday Supplement. Coming up on today's show, Maurizio Sarri, he's settling into life at Chelsea after Marcus Alonso scores the winner against Arsenal at Stamford Bridge. You can buy the title, but you can't buy class. The special one, he attacks Manchester City after they make fun of him in their behind-the-scenes documentary. And will White Hart Lane, will it ever be ready? Tottenham's plans to be in their new stadium next month, well, they've been postponed because of safety issues. Here to keep everybody happy this morning, Shaun Custis, he's head of sports at The Sun. Steve Bates is the chief football writer at The People. Henry Winter is also a chief football writer. He's with The Times. Morning to you guys. Like your new suit, Henry?
Morning.
Very sharp.
Do we like the new music?
Super sharp. You like the new music?
I've not heard the new music. Well, I don't think it's going to be top of the downloads, no, to be honest. Do you like it? It's a bit... What happened to the old music? I'm a traditionalist.
Yeah, very traditional.
No, we're 3 weeks into this now. You should start training your ear to it. Shaun, you've had a good holiday by the looks of things. It's good to see you.
Yes, it's smashing. Thank you, Neil. Yeah. I presume everybody else had a holiday as well, did they?
Steve, you've been where? Portugal, really?
Yes, but that was a long time ago now.
Yeah. Should we get on with the show?
Yeah.
OK. That's kind of my fault, really. Don't forget, you can tweet the show about Henry's new suit.
The music.
Shaun's impressive tan, the music. Tweet the show at Sunday Sup. The best will appear on your screen over the next 90 minutes. Let's have a look at some of the papers, because that's what we're here for. The Sunday Times, front page of their sports section. It was a bolt from the blue. It was the winner from Marcus Alonso at Stamford Bridge yesterday. Good win for Sarri, good win for Chelsea, 3-2 at Stamford Bridge. The Observer also reflects on that magic moment from Marcus Alonso scoring the winner yesterday. But the Sunday Mirror, they changed tack. City, they're rich, but they can't buy class. This is Jose Mourinho ahead of Manchester United's clash with Brighton this afternoon. Of course, Manchester City, they also play today. We'll get into that in part 2 of today's programme. The Mail on Sunday, they also reflect it's class war, that's the headline, but also Spurs facing a delay until 2019 before they move into their new stadium at White Hart Lane. That's Nick Harris's story on the back of the Mail this morning. It is going well for Tottenham on the field, though. At last, Harry scoring in August. He scored yesterday for Tottenham in their 3-1 victory over Fulham. That's reflected on the front page of the Sun's goals pull out as well. He is the king of Wembley, Harry Kane, scoring in the Premier League in August. Not such a good day, though. Not such a good August for Jamie Vardy. V for vicious. Matt Doherty feeling the full force of Jamie Vardy's thunderous challenge yesterday, but Leicester, he did get sent off. Leicester went on, though, to win that game. Relieves a little bit of pressure on Claude Puel, you would think. OK, we're going to start off, though, with events at Stamford Bridge. Steve was there yesterday to watch Chelsea beat Arsenal 3-2. What are your thoughts on Chelsea's... the performance of both teams and how both managers have settled into the unique pressures of English football, Steve, and the environment?
Well, Sarri seems to have slotted in seamlessly, doesn't he? I was at Huddersfield last week when his team were really efficient, effective. OK, you could say Huddersfield are not top class opposition, but they did beat Man United.
They demolished them, though, didn't they?
Man United last season there at the John Smith Stadium. But, you know, they were very, very, very clinical and professional. And that's what I think we're going to expect from Sarri's team. Yesterday, it was a more difficult game, I think, than people probably realise against Arsenal. Arsenal have been sort of panned a bit for having the same old failings in defence and being a bit flaky in that respect. But they could quite easily have come away from Stamford Bridge yesterday with a draw. They missed some really big chances, which will make horror viewing when they review that video on Monday, because Aubameyang missed a couple, Iwobi missed one. They could easily have maybe won there. That probably would have been a bit harsh on Chelsea. But the thing that impressed me about Chelsea was the way Jorginho is quite clearly now the pivotal figure in that team. You know, last season maybe it was Kante and Hazard, but certainly while Hazard was not on the pitch yesterday, he didn't come on till about 60 minutes. I thought Jorginho was fantastic, and you could see he is Sarri on the pitch. He's demanding everything from the players, telling them what to do. Clearly, he's kind of embedded. Sarri's philosophy is embedded in Jorginho, and he's trying to bring that out of the players on the pitch. And I thought he was really excellent yesterday. Very, very sort of influential in the way they played.
But didn't you think, sorry, on the back of that, didn't you think that Hazard actually changed the game when he came on? Because, I mean, I still think, I take your point about Jorginho, and some of those passes over the back of Arsenal's very high line in the first half were terrific, and he settled in really quickly. And it's interesting to see the dynamic in terms of N'Golo Kante being used more by Sarri, or box-to-box, as he calls him. But Hazard Hazard, for me, is the brains, is the catalyst, is the creative heartbeat, and they're a complete different team when he comes on. I think he's special. So I think it's quite encouraging for them. You know, you've got the new players settling in quickly, and Kovacevic as well, and then Hazard as well. I mean, he's just a class actor.
Don't you think this is a little bit, though, like when Conte came in after Mourinho had left, there was everybody was going on about, oh, there's a new joy about Chelsea, you know, they're playing with a bit of freedom, the manager's bouncing on the touchline, he's got a great relationship with the players, and great. So perhaps we maybe have to see this run for a little bit longer before we suddenly decide, oh, it's so much better and everything's fantastic, because it feels very similar.
I just get the feeling it won't unravel in the same way that it did with Conte, because Sarri's a different beast. I think he's far more, although he's Italian, I think he's far more, he's a calmer individual. You can tell that by seeing him on the touchline. Yeah, he's passionate, but not in the same way that Conte was perhaps manic. There's
there was a lot of talk about a bit of fun at Chelsea when Conte first came in.
Yeah, that soon disappeared, though, didn't it?
Well, after winning the title, he fell out. Well, I mean, what Williams' comments the other day. But I agree with you. I agree with Shaun. We shouldn't write out Conte and Antonio Conte and what he did in their history. I know it's a sort of revolving door with managers at Chelsea, but what he did for them in that title-winning season, the way he changed them tactically, and the emotional engagement with the fans. I mean, I think the fans will still love him.
Yeah. I also think, just talking about Alonso there, I think he's one of the great unsung heroes of Chelsea, Alonso. He's brilliant getting forward. He gets his fair shares of goals. I think, was he in this country on loan at Sunderland at some point? Bolton. Bolton. And you think, well, how did he end up going from that to where he is now? And he is a really important figure in that team. Gets forward a lot, good defensively.
He's not great defensively. He's good, but that's his Achilles heel.
There's been a lot of faith shown in by successive managers, and to me, there's a lot of faith shown in him by the rest of the team. They use him a lot in attack, and I'm really impressed with him every time I see him.
Steve? What impression do you have on Sarri's brief at Chelsea? What is the task?
Task, as always, is to probably win the league title.
Are they ready for that, though?
Well, if they keep Eden Hazard, if this window closes without him going, and I suspect it will do, because there'd be no value in Chelsea selling him. But until that window shuts for sure, you can never be certain. Especially after comments, Hazard made early in the summer, really, when he kind of threw his future into some doubt. But I think if they manage to keep him, which I'm sure they will, they've kept Willian. They've got a really, really strong squad. The only thing that I would say about Chelsea is that Morata is no Diego Costa. Costa gave that Chelsea team so much. And I know Morata scored yesterday and it was a good goal as well. But I think somewhere further down the line, Chelsea are going to suffer in attack because he cannot rely on Eden Hazard every single time. OK, they've got other guys, Pedro, Willian, who will weigh, Giroud, who will weigh in with goals, but I think longer term they're going to need Sergio Aguero, somebody of that calibre, Harry Kane, somebody who will give them 25, 30 goals a season. If they did that, I think Chelsea would be a huge force.
I think Chelsea would also like maybe a period of calm between the dugout and the boardroom, because I mean, like the politics and the drama and the soap opera, which we probably like because of the headlines. I think with Abramovich, what he's having to deal with in terms of residency, in terms of the new stadium, he would probably rather not have to fight too many battles with the coach at the moment. I think he would probably also quite like one or two of the sort of the great academy products that Jody Morris and people at the academy. Jody's obviously moved on to Derby. They've been developing, and all these FA Youth Cup winners. I think he would love to see a little bit more of a pathway. But I think we saw yesterday, and you look at the treatment of Loftus-Cheek, you think that's probably not going to happen under Sarri.
Didn't we always think that might happen to Loftus-Cheek, though, despite the fact he was getting to the World Cup and that? You wondered where he would fit when the Italian manager coming in with his own ideas, with the type of players he was bringing in. You thought, it's probably better for Loftus-Cheek to leave, sadly. Because Cahill's probably more understandable. He was going out of the team anyway last season, but
the only way I could see maybe Loftus-Cheek getting in, I mean, he's playing Ross Barkley in that centre midfield at the moment. The few times yesterday Barkley made loose passes and he was responsible for making a pass to Willian, who got caught in possession, and then Arsenal scored. I think perhaps over a season I couldn't imagine Barkley being. He's there at the moment, but I can't imagine him being there all season. And maybe that would be a way for...
No,
I know he wasn't. And at the end of the game, he was quizzed about that, and Sarri made some kind of, you know, long-winded sort of tactical assessment of why he didn't have him on the bench, because he wanted the makeup of the bench to be different this time, but didn't, you know... Obviously, we were fishing whether he's going to go out on loan, but he didn't really... He wasn't conclusive on that. But you do, like Henry says, you do feel that... I'm not sure Chelsea will ever change their spots on the way they sort of handle young players.
But it's good to see Barkley getting games, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
From an England perspective, from him, you know, he was... When he came through at Everton...
He played OK yesterday as well.
Yeah, I think he's been all right this season.
Apart from that, getting the ball where you referred to, which was the thing we go back to Roy Hodgson in 2014, leading up to England, it was the same thing happening, and you wonder, somebody's got to knock just that bit out of him. You want him to be creative, you want him to take the risk, but all managers have criticised him for giving away the ball in particular areas which are really dangerous. And it happened again yesterday.
But if he trains alongside Hazard and he watches him and learns from him, and Ross Barkley is the type of individual who will go away and look at the clips and the videos of all players as well as his own performance, you know, it can only be of benefit, obviously, to him and to England and to Chelsea.
I'm not advocating he should be dropped, by the way. I'm just saying that maybe Loftus-Cheek may see that position as a way in sometime in the season.
It's certainly alarming that he's not in the Chelsea... He's not even made the squad. It's alarming.
Did you see the renaissance of Pedro, for instance, coming about? Because I think we'd sort of forgotten about him and thought he might be eased out. And he's come back with a bit of a bang, had a brilliant start to the season, and that's slightly confused the issue too for English players who might want to get a game.
Let's get on to a bit of Arsenal as well. What did you think of... How did you assess Arsenal, their performance? We know they had a lot of chances.
Yeah, so they did.
It could have been
but first
very
20,
different. Facts are they didn't take those chances. They weren't ruthless. They didn't punish Chelsea.
No.
But it felt as though we could see what Emery is trying to do, the pattern.
For sure. First 20 minutes, they were kind of overrun a bit and overpowered. You kind of half expect that at Chelsea, because Chelsea do like to impose themselves early on in the game, and you know, the energy in the team and the way Sarri was forcing them into that high press, you know, it made it difficult for Arsenal. But they started to carve chances, and I thought Alex Iwobi was absolutely superb for a spell yesterday in the period where Arsenal were 2-0 down, and then they came back, and Iwobi had a hand in one of the goals and then scored the other himself. Really influential, but they did miss chances. You know, you can't help getting away from the fact that what let them down again was the same old failings in defence. You know, they gave away sort of 3 goals. First goal, the defence was just completely missing when Pedro scored. You know, the other goals, you could put your finger at the defence, and I think until he gets that right, I'm not sure they're going to be serious contenders. But certainly he stuck to the plan yesterday. Even at 2-0 down, he was urging the players forward and wanted them to be brave on the ball. And I saw him a couple of times with Monreal, who was kind of turning inside and playing it back, and he was telling him to go forward, get the ball forward. So I think it will take time for Arsenal, but I just get the feeling that it's more of a personnel thing with them until they get some players in there who can defend properly.
I agree with that. The one tactical surprise that he decided to play a high line early on when you've got someone like Mustafian who's not going to win a foot race against anyone. So I thought that was a surprise. But everything you hear from Arsenal, from going to sort of press conferences, I was there when he sort of got unveiled, as we call it. Emery is so impressive. I mean, he's clearly realised the problem with Arsenal, that he's tried to bring in better defenders. I think the problem is above Emery in terms of Kroenke, because Kroenke needs to... You look at how Liverpool saw their problem at centre-half, went out and spent, what was it, 75 million on Virgil van Dijk. Arsenal are buying players, slightly more corner shot players than the sort of, you know, the Harrods and the Selfridges and the type of places that they should be shopping at, particularly with the money that Kroenke has got. So I hope in the next transfer window, and really in the summer transfer window, when the bigger signings become available and Arsenal can really push for it, that Emery is backed by the board, because unless they do that, they're going to be struggling along with a bottom half of the Premier League defence. They've got, as you pointed out, they got, you know, the attacking wise. I mean, I thought Mkhitaryan was decent yesterday. Iwobi, I thought was very good. I really like Guendouzi, who's come in midfield, who's a kid.
What he's done there is a massive risk, isn't it? A real youngster as the fulcrum of his midfield, and he's thought, this is what I'm going to do now. I think he could have been really, really taken apart for that, but the lad has played really well so far, and let's be honest, who knew much about him? Not many people. And he's sort of in charge of that midfield.
Yeah.
That's a big risk
and
on Emery's part.
You could see it when they gave the ball away. I mean, that was good. And if when Torreira's ready, maybe the two of them can sort of build longer-term partnership. But what Emery is having to do is just deal with an imbalanced squad of too many average players, too many players also who did not, I don't want to criticise Wenger because he was a magnificent manager for them, but too many players who did not develop and did not address their own flaws under Wenger. Granit Xhaka, is he going to get booked? Is he going to give the ball away? Is he not going to track back? All those same problems. So Emery's got a huge thing. But look, what he needs is patience and needs backing in the transfer window.
One of his players needs his backing at the moment as well. Mesut Ozil, substituted yesterday. Now, I was at the Emirates last week when Mahrez was substituted for Man City, and it probably took him about 3 minutes to walk off the field.
Yes.
Ozil wasn't far behind him yesterday. What are your thoughts on that situation?
I don't think everybody was looking at Ozil yesterday to have an impact on the game, and he just didn't. Again, and I think this is the enduring problem with him that. But
to see him hooked. This is Ozil. This is one of their most decorated
Wenger didn't
players.
often do that, did he? So he's dealing with a different manager in Emery, who maybe has got a short span of patience when he's not performing, and he didn't perform yesterday. Alex Iwobi, a young kid with not as much experience in any sense as him, he just kind of completely eclipsed him in terms of what he was doing and the energy and the commitment. And I know Ozil has this kind of very languid style that sometimes, it looks as though he's disinterested, and I don't think he offers enough to the team, to be honest. And I'm absolutely certain he wouldn't get in a Pep Guardiola team and he wouldn't get in a Jurgen Klopp team, for sure, because he doesn't do enough. Emery
was ruthless with Aaron Ramsey. He was substitute. He was substitute yesterday. Will Ozil play next weekend?
Who are they playing next weekend?
Should he play?
Who are they playing next weekend? Probably
next weekend.
I'm not sure who they're playing next weekend, but listen, they've had a brutal sort of beginning to the season, City and Chelsea. They will roll teams over and score a lot of goals against some teams, and then in those situations, Mesut Ozil will shine. But you want him to do it. You want him to do it against the big teams, and
is
very often.
Is West Ham a big team because that's who they're
that's who they're playing next week? West Ham, yeah, of course. And he'd probably have a good game against West Ham and be quite influential. But,
would you start him?
No, I wouldn't, because.
Would you do a Sarri? Would he be even in the squad? Sorry.
I'd have him in the squad, yeah, of course I would, yeah, but I wouldn't. I don't think I would not see him as an absolute guaranteed name on the team.
But if he doesn't do enough for the team and he doesn't offer anything, why would you have him in the squad then?
Well, this is a mystery for me, because Arsenal missed a trick here. Why didn't they sell him? They had the opportunity to sell him. Instead,
because Wenger thought it was making a statement.
They stuck him on 250, 300 grand a week on a new deal.
They thought
I'm not sure if Emery would have been in charge, that would have happened.
It was really interesting to watch him. I went to Germany, Mexico, quite close seat to the touchline, watching him against Mexico in the World Cup. And just to watch him and his reactions when he doesn't get the ball, it really was, like Steve says, you think he's disinterested. When you actually watch him really close up, he really does look, completely disinterested. And you think, why don't you track back and run after him, or why don't you? And it's just not his thing. And if people had a go at him, he just turned his head and walked away. And it's a very strange approach. I know he's always had a bit of this about him, but he looked like, look, when he played England, 2010, for instance, there was I'm sure there was more energy about him. There was definitely more.
You mentioned the long walk off yesterday, and it was a long walk off. It seemed to take forever. And his face, you're looking at him thinking, do you think you shouldn't be brought off here, or are you disappointed with yourself? It's one of those you don't quite know.
Let's hope he's disappointed with himself, because obviously there is a player there. He's won the World Cup. He was Germany's national team player of the year. Was it 5 times in 7 years? So there's something there. The assist record, I agree. I take your point about sort of many of them against lesser teams. I just think he needs to look at himself and wants to know whether he wants to be remembered as one of Arsenal's great players, or actually one of those Arsenal players who really should have done better.
Yeah, and at the moment he probably should have done a bit better, certainly yesterday at Stamford Bridge when he was dragged off in Arsenal's 3-2 defeat against Chelsea. OK, next up we're going to move on to Manchester City, Manchester United. Mourinho, he's got tucked in this morning. It's a class war. We'll talk about him next. Welcome back. They're still talking about the music. Get over it! Back pages of the papers this morning, Steve, and you were there from Mourinho's press conference. He said this all with a straight face, apparently, didn't he? Let's just go through some of the quotes. This is talking about All or Nothing, the documentary, the Fly on the Wall documentary, monitoring Manchester City last season, their title-winning season. They got to 100 points. But Mourinho said, you don't need to be disrespectful to have a fantastic movie. My first reaction is if you are a rich club, you can buy the top players, but you cannot buy class. The second reaction is because I'm in the movie, I want royalties. It goes on to talk about the T-shirts that Man City had printed up for winning the league last season. That was before Manchester United went and won at the Etihad. Was he ready for these? Was he ready for the questions about the documentary on Friday, Steve?
Oh, listen, it was clearly on his agenda. You know, in his time at Old Trafford, Alex Ferguson often had an agenda when he walked in, and clearly that was on Jose's agenda. He feels he's been slighted, disrespected, made to look a bit foolish in the documentary, particularly in the sections about selling Kevin De Bruyne when he was Chelsea manager. Obviously, we know De Bruyne is kind of instrumental in everything City did last season, more or less. So he claims he's not seen the documentary, but he does know an awful lot about it. And you know, he just feels that some of the narrative as well, the voiceover narrative, it was kind of disparaging to him and his style of football.
Was it?
Well, I mean, you know, I think it was called I think it was ahead of the December derby, and they were saying, you know, attack versus possession, you know, attack versus park the bus. Well, you know, that kind of narrative is already out there about Jose, isn't it? And the way he likes his teams to play. So nothing new there. Of course, nothing new that he sold Kevin De Bruyne to Chelsea. That's been well documented. So
Man City's players were singing "Park the Bus" after the game, weren't they, in the dressing room? That's the Old Trafford game, isn't it?
The cameras weren't there that day, obviously, because Manchester United were one of the few clubs, I think, one of the only clubs that didn't allow that Amazon camera crew into the ground that day. So they missed that, and obviously the bust up in the tunnel. But he's clearly not happy about it. But I think City's point of view is that they handed over all editorial control to the Amazon producers of the 8-episode series, and that you know, while they could veto certain aspects if they concerned legal or medical or things like that, the editorial content was off limits to them, and you know, in throwing open the doors and allowing the cameras in, unprecedented access, they basically said to Amazon, get on with it.
Do you believe, though, that they can't step in and say, look, that one's really detrimental to us, we don't think that's right, you're going to have to take that out? Do you actually believe that they can't do that? If they wanted to?
Certainly if they wanted to, they could have done. Certainly a powerful figure like Pep Guardiola might have done. But listen, City maintain that is their stance.
I know they do.
They didn't interfere in the editorial content.
They want it very much to be open house and for you to see the real City.
Of course. And let's face it, you know, they did end up winning the title in spectacular history-making fashion. Now, they didn't know that when they first signed up for that, and I think the motivation behind the documentary was that City clearly feel that they are behind Manchester United and Liverpool and Arsenal in terms of history and tradition and the kind of worldwide following that those clubs have, and that there's a catch-up there to be had by City. And I think in doing the documentary, that they felt that was one way to do it. Now, they struck lucky, obviously, because it was a season where they were absolutely magnificent. Yeah. But it could have gone the other way.
But one of the great narratives of the series is Pep Guardiola's brilliant man management. I mean, you just look at him in those scenes in the dressing room, and when he's sort of arguing, and he is just this almost messianic figure, you know, almost sort of on edge and challenging them.
Yeah.
And the Raheem Sterling goal thing.
It's fascinating.
The sort of debate with sort of Fabian Delph, I think, comes out of it incredibly well in terms of that hunger. I mean, the image which we occasionally paint and is Manchester City is depicted is that it's all about money. It's all about sort of glass. But actually, when you look at it, you've got a dressing room who's fighting for each other. You've got players who are fighting for each other, wanting to do well. You've got that marvellous figure of Vincent Kompany, what a leader he is. But at the heartbeat of it and of this series is Pep Guardiola. And I think maybe if you're one or two Manchester United players or Manchester United fans looking at that, you'll say, actually, how brilliant is this manager? Pep Guardiola in terms of inspiring his players. And maybe you look at some of Jose Mourinho's man management in recent years. Luke Shaw, obviously, he's now responding to. He's been playing well. Pogba as well. Maybe there is an element of that with Mourinho.
But do you know for sure that Jose isn't a great man manager in the dressing room at times? You don't know. He clearly was in his early Chelsea era. Clearly was at Porto. He clearly has been at times at Man United.
And
if you put the camera in the dressing room, maybe you think, wow, Mourinho, that's incredible.
But if you look at a player like Luke Shaw, everyone knows that Luke Shaw needs an arm around the shoulder, and that's why it was encouraging Mourinho did respond to Luke Shaw having a good game the other night. Pogba as well. I actually thought it was, I think you were probably at that press conference, I thought it was a clever move by Mourinho to make him captain, because Pogba is one of those individuals. Pogba's come back from the World Cup. Pogba is now even more of a superstar. But what Pogba's also got from the Manchester United fans' perspective, and also if you look at from Ed Woodward's perspective, leaving aside the marketing element, is that he is one of their own, in inverted commas, in terms of the academy. Pogba, everyone who sort of works with him says, what a fantastic kid he is. Kid, inverted commas. I mean, he's a World Cup winner. What a fantastic man he is. And you saw the game the other night after the Leicester game. He spoke so well. He spoke as a leader. And you just think that Mourinho, taking it slightly away from Manchester City, but the whole Manchester City, what comes through in that documentary, is all about man management and individuals working together. And maybe that's something that Mourinho should pick up on as well. Because if he wants to drive Manchester United forward, he needs to do it in tandem with Paul Pogba. Let's get on to the Pogba situation, because he did speak after the Leicester game last Friday. He said, look, I'll be fine if I said what I wanted to say. I know Sir Alex Ferguson famously said there's too many Custises. I feel like we've got the wrong Custis this morning, because Neil wrote about their bust up in the week in the Sun. Shaun, what do we feel? Where do we feel their relationship? Where do we feel the relationship is between Mourinho and Paul Pogba as things stand?
I think Mourinho wants it to be a good one. I think, as Henry referred to last Friday, he was a beast of a player against Leicester. Fantastic, revelled in having the armband all over the pitch. I still don't know what he actually means by saying, I'll get fined if I say what I really want to say, because having put in a performance like that, it looked like he was certainly playing for his manager and revelling in the fact that he's got the armband. But what does he mean, I'll be fined if I say that? I think that was the perfect opportunity for Pogba to say whatever he wanted to say. And but he would have been fined. Well, Jose said at the press conference that he's only ever fined one player, and that's Anthony Martial. I'm not sure Martial would be pleased about that.
So it doesn't feel, Steve, you've got far more experience of this than probably any of us on the table, but it wouldn't feel right. A captain of Manchester United, it's not becoming of a captain of Manchester United to walk off a pitch having scored on his game after coming back from winning a World Cup, first game since coming back from winning the World Cup with France, to walk off the field having been given the armband by Mourinho to say exactly the things that he really wanted to say.
But Neil,
do Manchester United captains behave that way?
If you're going to drop a grenade like he did drop, should you then not offer up some explanation? Otherwise, don't drop the grenade. Why drop it? If you know,
because he was tantalising, wasn't it? It left the journalists there to be in a fairly strong position to write about the situation between what's clearly a volatile situation between Mourinho and I don't think it's just between those two. I think it's a three-way conversation, because I wouldn't discount Raiola, the agent in all of this. I mean, Jose Mourinho is very, very clever in what he said on Friday about David De Gea on the brink of a new contract. And he said, he respected the way that De Gea and his agent, Jorge Mendes, who's also Mourinho's agent, hadn't gone to war over De Gea's future and hadn't tried to agitate to get him to Real Madrid. And that was purely in direct reference to the way Raiola appears to be agitating behind the scenes at United to get Pogba to Barcelona.
But don't you think he is? And don't you think Mourinho, there should be some sympathy from Mourinho if he's seeing a fantastic footballer who he may want to build around,
that's what I'm saying,
who is being distracted by his agent?
Of course.
So maybe the real issue there is less between him and Pogba and more between him and Raiola.
And it's always said that players are really, really powerful these days. So if they are that powerful, why do they let their agents, behave like this behind the scenes? The same happened with Yaya Toure, didn't it, at Man City? Yeah. Yaya's agent was often sort of putting stuff out there. Yaya Toure never knocked that down, obviously it hurt him at City in the last couple of years of his time with Guardiola. But, Pogba could quite easily come out and say, this is where I'm going to be for the next 3, 4, 5 years. This is where I want to be. He hasn't actually said that yet. And, you know, while Jose's getting hammered left, right and centre for his part in the whole Pogba situation, you know, I do think it's a bit unfair. It's not totally a one-way street.
Do you think Pogba wants to be accepted as, I am the man at Manchester United?
Yeah.
You've given me the captaincy.
Absolutely.
I want to dictate what happens on the field, and he won't be totally allowed to dictate what happens on the field because Jose's the manager, whereas maybe if he had Sarri, I don't know, then he would be allowed to run the show on the field.
But if you look at the sort of tweak in the tactical formation, I mean, that really does help Pogba.
Yeah, it does.
That more sort of...
Fred.
Fred
I think the arrival of Fred is a big... It's going to free Pogba to do the damn... We all want to see Pogba playing the kind of football he did in that second half against Man City, where he was absolutely dominant and he was attacking the box. That's where Pogba, for me, is best.
Yeah.
Sorry, can we just be fair to Pogba? I take your point about Mourinho, but can we just be fair to Pogba in all this? I mean, everything you hear about from behind the scenes, Pogba is going in, you know, he came back early, he trained, you know, 3 days, I mean, as Mourinho made the point, and he was straight in and he gives a performance like that. You hear all these stories about him being incredibly respectful to all the academy people. You know, he's not a big I am. He'll go and shake their hands. He's not flash. People talk about the sort of bling and the haircuts, and obviously the emoji was a mistake last season. But you know, there is a fantastic footballer who represents many of the strongest qualities that we associate with Manchester United in terms of that adventure, in terms of that homegrown element, in terms of that swag. He's a World Cup winner. So actually, you know, everyone's trying to sort of create this war between Mourinho and Pogba, and maybe the war is more between Mourinho and Raiola, and actually think, well, why don't the two of them just work together for the better of Manchester United? Yeah. Because some of the conduct, some of the headlines have been a little bit unnecessary and not what we expect from Manchester United historically. For
me, Pogba is the future for Manchester United, not Mourinho. And I think
why can't they both be?
I think in a head-to-head fight, you know, if egos were, you know, at the centre of it, and if Mourinho didn't want Pogba to be the dominant force at Manchester United, then, you know, there's obviously a problem there. But, you know...
How far away are we from that, Steve, that scenario?
Well, I sensed a conciliatory tone with Mourinho in his press conference on Friday. Listen, let's be clear on this. Pogba, at times last season, was dragging the ball back with his studs on the ball. He was hanging on to it too long. There were tricks and there were flicks and there were bits of flashiness. And, you know, he wasn't getting away with it. And it was detracting from his performances. He didn't do that once in the World Cup under Didier Deschamps. He was absolutely focused, and that's what I think Manchester United need him to be. And he has been like that. Certainly at the start of the season in Leicester, he was. And I think, you know, Jose's right to demand that from him. You know, let's be fair. Pep Guardiola would demand that from him. So would Klopp. And I think it's really important that Pogba does what he's good at. And if he does, he can be as big as he wants to be at Manchester United.
Love the passion, Steve. You've ever seen Pogba with the captain's armband on Sky later this afternoon because Manchester United played Brighton. We do need to have a word on Manchester City as well. Shaun, Kevin De Bruyne injured probably for 3 months. Will that present an opportunity for Phil Foden?
Well, it would be nice if finally... I knew you were going to do that as we look at a picture of the campus behind Neil and Henry's smug grin on his face about the fact now, finally, after 11, 12 years, we're going to get an English player who might get a run in a City team who come through the academy. Look, I really would love to see Foden get that run and to prove everything that everybody says about him. I think it'd be great. It'd be a vindication, if you like, to a certain extent of what City have been trying to do, but it has taken a heck of a long time, and they have lost some young English players losing some English players along the way. He's a good young player. I hope he gets the chance. Will he be the one who gets the chance to start, though? Will it be him?
Well, or Bernardo Silva. I mean, Bernardo Silva's been excellent. No, look, I take your point on that, but yeah, Gundogan. I know all the hipsters love Gundogan, but I'm thinking when
are you not a hipster?
Definitely not a hipster. Right. Too old. No, I just think that Foden, there's something about him. You saw it with the England under-17s. You've seen it, you know, in the Community Shield. I thought he can rise to the occasion. I quite like the way, I'm just reading a lot of the pieces, Johnny Northcroft did a very good piece on him in the Sunday Times today, and he's obviously got good people around him, obviously family, agents, and Guardiola key. And I just like the fact that he's not going out and over celebrating a bit part in City's title win. I just think he's a player we will cherish over the next sort of 10 years. And I agree. I don't think he'll be embedded swiftly at Manchester City, but he's going to learn in training. But maybe also he'll look at some of the other younger players. And we always say, well, should we give these young players too much exposure too early? Hasn't really stopped Ryan Sessegnon. Obviously, different team, different division last season, but he hasn't looked out of place. So sometimes we've got to give these kids a chance.
No, do you think he's going to get that chance?
I just think Bernardo Silva will probably take maybe that more central position.
I also think with
Foden is definitely good enough.
With the players City have, you could put Phil Foden in there, and I don't think it would weaken City considerably. I think he's an absolute tremendous talent, but obviously with young teenage talent, there's always sort of ups and downs, and we won't really know that until he gets a consistent 5, 6, 7, 10 game run in the team. Yep. Will he get that? I'm not so sure.
Not an easy team to break into.
No,
it's not. Particularly after their performance last season in the Premier League, and of course their win on the opening weekend at Arsenal last weekend. But we will see if Phil Foden starts for Man City later on. That game on Sky against Huddersfield. OK, next up, stadium issues. Stadium issues for Tottenham. We don't know when they're going to move into White Hart Lane. And more stadium issues at London Stadium. West Ham, not a defeat for them this time against Bournemouth. More on them coming next. Welcome back with us this morning, David Dickinson. Sorry, Shaun Custis is here, Steve Bates, and Henry Winter. Let's just remind you what's in the papers this morning. Waiting for a comeback from Shaun. There isn't one, is there?
You had to look him up, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
Shall I say why you looked him up? There's your comeback.
I'd rather you didn't. Don't give anyone an opportunity in this game. Sunday Times front page. Let's get back to the football. Sunday Times front page. Marcus Alonso scores the winner for Chelsea yesterday against Arsenal. Steve was there for that game. Back page of the Mail on Sunday. It's a class war. This is Mourinho ahead of Manchester United's clash with Brighton, having a dig back at Manchester City over their documentary. Spurs facing a delay till 2019 for their stadium. That's reports from Nick Harris this morning in the Mail on Sunday. We're coming on to that in a moment. The Observer reflecting on Marcus Alonso's winner at the Bridge. Vicious, it is vicious for Vardy, sent off yesterday for that challenge on Matt Doherty at the King Power. Suspension for him. Leicester did win, though. Ease a bit of pressure on Claude Puel. The King of Wembley, though, Harry Kane, off the mark in August, scores yesterday in Tottenham's third goal against Fulham at Wembley Stadium. And that's where they'll continue to play for the time being, Henry, until White Hart Lane is finally ready. What are your thoughts on Tottenham's handling of the situation? Because, of course, they wanted to be in for the Liverpool game next month. It turns out that they will now play certainly the next 3 games. Beyond that, perhaps the Champions League group games as well, going to September, October, all the way through to December. What are your thoughts on the way that...
Well, it was your story early in the week, and it was embarrassing for Spurs. I think it's embarrassing in terms of their relationship with their supporters, the lack of communication. They should have hinted in advance that there was a possibility that the building wouldn't be ready in time. But there's a broader issue here in that at some point, when you look at Tottenham's long history, this will be one of the iconic moments when this stadium is opened. And not simply for Tottenham Hotspur Football Club and the players and the supporters when they finally get in there. It'll be a great addition to the Premier League landscape. But also, and people tend to forget about this is an area of London, and I didn't grow up too far away from it, I'm saying that, slightly different part of London, but that was an area that has long needed some TLC, some love, some investment. So Tottenham are helping regenerate an area. If you go there now, you just see the different developments that are cropping up around there. So, there is a broader thing here. So the actual, everyone sort of moved into sort of properties slightly later than they would have hoped, because there's snagging, because different things need done. This is headlines. This is embarrassing for them. They should have communicated better with the fans. But in 6-7 months' time, when everyone is, embedding in this fantastic home, the fans will be happy. And I think they'll continue to look over at West Ham and think, wow, how lucky were we? Daniel
Levy might feel the same as well. Should they be allowed to play in 2 stadiums in one season, assuming they eventually get to play.
Yeah,
at
I don't
home.
see a problem with it. I never understood the indecent haste when they sort of knew they weren't going to be ready at the start of the season. I didn't understand the indecent haste to say, well, we've got to be in by September, or just give yourself the time. Say, look, it looks like we're going to be at Wembley till December or whatever.
Well, I think that was the problem, wasn't it? Because that historically that has never been allowed before. You know, you're given a certain amount of leeway, as Liverpool, West Ham were when they remodel their stadiums, but it's a finite time. I didn't think
gone to the FA or the Premier League.
Well, I didn't think it possible to extend that to Christmas or beyond Christmas.
Well, lots of clubs have played in other stadiums that aren't their own home. Wimbledon were at Crystal Palace for I can't remember how long. So
yeah, but they were there for a specific period.
Yes, well, all right. Well, maybe Spurs could have said, look, we're going to need Wembley for a year and a half.
I mean half a season, not half a season.
Well, I don't see it as a huge problem. I think they could have worked it out and said, look, we're probably going to need to be there till start of January, and that's the way it is. And then there's no need for the indecent haste.
I think they knew at the start of the year that this wasn't going to be ready. I think that, the way that they were talking behind the scenes, they knew it really wasn't
so
going to be ready.
So what's going to happen? I mean, what would happen to them anyway? So is there going to be some sort of sanctions? Are they going to be deducted points? I don't think so.
Well, I don't think the FA are going to be complaining, because the FA are going to be making more money out of Wembley.
Of course
I think the Premier League, but the Premier League are quite happy just to let commerce rule.
Exactly. I don't see it as a big problem for Spurs anymore to have said, as I say, give us a bit longer.
Okay.
I just think it's a big internal issue. I think it shows a lack of respect to their fans who have committed money, who have sort of sorted out travel plans. I know it's only a trip around the North Circular, but the North Circular can be a bit sticky on match day.
And that money is interest-free money as well that they've invested into the club.
And it's not as if they've poured money into the transfer window in that period.
Yeah. What do they do? What can they do, Steve, about the October the 28th fixture, when of course they are supposed to be playing Manchester City at their new stadium? As things stand, we think it will have to be played elsewhere, but of course Wembley Stadium on that particular date is booked for an NFL game. How do they get around that?
I have no idea. I have no idea what they are going to do.
Because the Premier League want them to play it in that round of fixtures as well. That's the other problem. They want them to shoehorn it in to that week of the season.
Pep Guardiola was asked, wasn't he, if how would he feel about that game being switched? So
that's a non-starter.
It's a home game for Manchester City. He rightly pointed out that the reverse fixture is in the title running, and he wouldn't want to be going to Tottenham in a new stadium.
Well, they've won it by then, won't they?
Quite possibly, but I can see his point. It's huge kind of problems, and you've got to get an agreement from everybody to do that. I suppose he could play it in the following midweek, fit it in somewhere.
And if they have to play at another stadium, I know you could say there's the rules and regulations. If they had to play at another stadium in London, obviously not Arsenal, but Twickenham or whatever, what's wrong? What's the big deal? Just do it. They need to do it. Do it.
OK, but everything looking good for them on the field, though, Henry. Harry scoring yesterday, two successive wins to open the season, despite their lack of signings.
Yeah, and Lucas Moura settling in, good goal. Lamella making that fantastic run. Still, the Toby Alderweireld situation, I think, is just bizarre. Yeah. I mean, they've got to address that. That cannot be healthy. Pochettino cannot be enjoying that situation when you've got a player of that calibre. So are you worried about that fly flying around?
That fly's in the muffin.
You don't want that muffin.
You don't want any of them.
The Sunday supplement fly is back.
Yeah. It is back.
It is back. Was that muffin there?
Yeah, it was that one.
We never had flies before that music change. Bring back the music.
They're on me. What does that say?
They did it at Newcastle, didn't they? Did they stop local hero and then they brought it back by fans campaign?
Yeah, OK. The campaign
started on the wrong note.
On Tottenham, it does kind of go to show that obviously they didn't do any business in the transfer in the summer window, and there's kind of there's a huge obsession with doing business in the transfer window that they haven't done, and doesn't seem to be harming them at all. They had a tricky opening day fixture away at Newcastle, never an easy place to go.
They did have 9 players, is it 9 players yesterday who were involved in World Cup semi-finals, and there will be a dip before Christmas with some of them. Yeah.
OK. Let's move on to West Ham. You think if Manuel Pellegrini had a haircut, that might sort things out a little bit?
It seems to have got longer and longer since he's been away.
Well, what's going on there? They spent 100 million quid.
They spent a lot of money. There's a lot of faith in Pellegrini in the boardroom. They believe they've got the right man for the job. He is a Premier League winner, and as we've just heard, it's not just about buying titles, as Steve's just explained earlier on. So therefore, he must have some sort of pedigree, and they put a lot of faith in him. So they're not about to turn on him after 2 games. The fans, not so much yesterday, turned on him. Well, they did sort of turn on him because they walked out up the stairs and he wasn't very happy about the fact they were leaving 10-15 minutes from the end, which you have to admit is a little bit weird when you're only losing by 1 goal. You want your team to get back in it. I think there will be, again, a sense that there'll be unrest at the situation at West Ham, but I think the fans understand that they've got to give this a bit longer. If they start turning on the team now, they're going to have an even longer period of anger, annoyance and all of that, like they did last season. They know they've got to let it settle down. I've got mates who are West Ham fans who actually said, this season, I'm going to have to stop complaining about the ground, stop complaining about the manager, and I'm going to have to just let it settle and see what happens. Isn't it? And see what happens. What is?
Your mate at West Ham.
What?
Isn't that is that who you're talking about?
What? No, my friends of mine who go and watch West Ham supporters.
I don't think Karen Brady would be complaining about the West Ham board.
No. Look, they know they've got to let it settle a bit. They know they created distraction for the team last season, and it needs to be a little period of calm. But it's going to be hard to get a period of calm if you keep losing games. But they've got to let it run for a while. Goodness me, they can't be...
But sorry, but that's like telling them to not be football fans.
No,
football fans are always going to, have the highs and the emotions. You can't just tell a football fan to go there and just sit there calmly, be all apathetic. You are going to be
You think every manager
engaged.
should get a chance, don't you, at a club?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, so he's got to be given a bit of a chance.
Definitely.
I'm not defending him as being the greatest manager
Definitely,
on earth.
but West Ham fans are emotionally engaged with their team.
All
and
football fans are emotionally engaged with their team. It's not just West Ham
Exactly,
fans,
so it's not just
sake.
your West Ham mates who are...
No, all my Newcastle
who
mates at Newcastle and all of that. You're all engaged with your team.
Exactly.
We accept that.
Exactly.
But even a lot of fans understand that perhaps it doesn't create the best environment for the team if you're always on the case right from the start of the season. So they might have to let this one run a little bit, give the players a chance to bed in and see where we are in, I don't know, 4 games.
They're not known for... West Ham fans aren't known for their patience, though, are they?
But there's a lot of clubs fans who aren't known for their patience. Yeah. We're not known for our patience, believe me.
They've also spent 100 million.
They've spent 100 million. And
they're in the stadium they don't particularly like. I think
right, where are they going to go? They're in it now. You've got to accept it.
Daniel Levy was right. He should have knocked it down.
Oh, yeah, right. So now what do they do? Given the situation they're in, do you keep complaining about the stadium? What do you do?
I think there are other things they could do to make it a little bit more of a football stadium.
Go on.
This whole
yes, you could reconfigure it and all of that. That's going to take time.
Yeah.
They'll need to move to Wembley if they can get Spurs out of it, and then they can.
I don't understand why a football club should be basically in hock to athletics, which goes there once every other year or whatever.
I get that.
It's also hugely difficult to integrate 5, 6, 7 new players into a team and expect them instantly to start winning. But when West Ham are losing to Bournemouth, and this is no disrespect to Bournemouth because Bournemouth are absolutely
only one signing in the summer.
Correct, and they're a really solid club. But West Ham fans would expect their fans to win that home fixture.
Steve, when Pellegrini was at Manchester City, how influential was he in terms of their development, their progression, their title win?
Listen, I think he did a good job. It all kind of fizzled out in a way for him. And but let's not forget, I think he won the double in his first season there with a team that wasn't properly fully formed and developed. Yeah, very good players, but nothing like the team it is today. I thought over the term of his tenure there, I thought Pellegrini did really well.
He's very likeable. He gets on with boards. I mean, and the fans like him. Didn't they have that banner, "This charming man," and a sort of picture of him? And he's a very sort of he's quite politically savvy in terms.
He's a good coach as well.
Yeah, he's a good coach.
Really good.
Well, he knows to start coaching.
But in all the time he was at Man City, I never heard him come out with a statement, any sort of revolutionary statement like the one he came out with yesterday about the fans leaving early. I'm not saying he would have said about Man City, but anything that sort of rocked the boat with anybody, with fans, with board or anything, that was quite something for him to say quite early in his tenure. So you sort of set a bit of a marker down there with them.
I think if you're giving someone 100 million, you've got to give them time as well. It's utterly pointless doing it otherwise because you just get that churn of players and managers. I think West Ham really need a period of stability now, and perhaps their expectation to be realigned, recalibrated, rebooted, whatever.
What should it be?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I always get.
What was?
Well, I always get. I always get the feeling with West Ham that they feel they should be above where they are.
That's what they're trying to achieve.
I know most football fans do that.
But isn't that what they're trying to achieve?
Yeah.
That was the reason for the move to the London Stadium. That was the reason they're spending £100 million. Their ambition is to be in the higher echelons, isn't it?
As you say, patience.
I don't know how I've ended up defending West Ham, really, but it is. If you spent that money, you move to a London stadium, you hope it was to make that team the team of London, wasn't it? To attract foreign visitors, to make them the place to go. It hasn't happened yet. Whether it ever will is...
I don't think West Ham will probably never get over losing leaving Upton Park. You just get that feeling that they never will. Other clubs have moved on. A lot of Man City fans weren't really happy to leave Main Road, but that needed to happen. I don't think, and they accept it needed to happen now, obviously because of what's happening. That's helped. But I don't think West Ham fans will ever accept the fact that they've left Upton Park.
What do they do? I mean, what happens now? If you don't accept that, where do you go?
They're stuck with it.
They are stuck with it.
Well, as Henry says, maybe knock it down.
I don't think the taxpayer's going to like that.
That could be an expensive proposition then, where would West Ham play as well for a season or two. OK, next up, we're going to dip into the Championship. Henry wants to talk about Leeds United. We'll also talk about Derby and Steve McLaren as well. Lost 7-1 yesterday up at West Brom as manager of QPR. More on that coming next. You're watching Sunday Supplement. Shaun's still with us. Steve's here as well, and Henry Winter too. Don't forget, Goals on Sunday's coming up a little bit later. It's Ben and Cammy. Where are they? Oh, they're around somewhere.
Morning, Neil. Morning, gents.
Got all the big boys in there today, I see. Yeah.
Haven't they just? We've got quite a big boy joining us today, haven't we, Cammy?
We certainly have, although he's not tall.
But huge in stature. Carlos Carvajal, of course, former Swansea and Sheffield Wednesday manager, is joining us, Cam.
Yeah, didn't quite make it with Swansea last year, but gave it a real good go.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to get his thoughts on Jose, a very good friend of his, and how he's coping in the Premier League. So bags of goals to talk about, bags of incidents. We'll be live at 11 o'clock.
Yeah, thanks very much, boys. OK, Swansea City in the Championship. We want to talk about another Championship team, and that's the team second at the moment. Brilliant start under Bielsa for Leeds United. Henry, you saw them, didn't you, in the Carabao Cup early in the week. What's changed at Ellen Road in terms of the mood, the atmosphere and their approach to life in the Championship?
Everything. You look at the gates, I mean, they got, what, 20,000 for Carabao Cup. I think he made sort of 8 or 9 changes, but the Bielsa stamp, which he has been instilling on the players, into the players at Thorpe Arch, was there, even with the sort of, in quotes, understudies. Patrick Bamford was tracking back, he was closing down, he was terrific. I just think that he's got them going, but his press conferences are bizarre. I mean, he walked in, and the first thing he said was "good evening." And no, he said "good night" as he walked in, and he sat down. Those are the only 2 words of English. And then he's got a Frenchman who's translating for him, and he doesn't give too much away. But wow, his team, you know, the energy in them, the pressing. I mean, you saw Kamal Rufa's goal yesterday. The sort of, you know, the Calvin Phillips, the passing, the movement. I mean, it's terrific. And to see it in the Championship, and if they can sustain it, it will be brilliant. I mean, we talked to Phil Parkinson after the game, and the Bolton manager, and he was talking about, well, actually, we've seen this sort of football before, but clearly it's fairly revolutionary for the Championship. And what is great about Bielsa is that he takes this, basically the kit man's bucket, flips it over and just sort of sits on it. And he's sitting there sort of watching, and then at the end of the game he stands up, shakes Phil Parkinson's hand, wanders off. Kitman comes over, flips the bucket over, puts some bottles and whatever, kit, shin pads, stray shin pads or whatever in there, and wanders off. And you know, you can see at some point Leeds and their museum, they may well have a place for this bucket because it's brilliant. But look, it's the whole atmosphere around there. There is this huge longing at Leeds United. They are such a huge club. You go around there and you see how they've redeveloped Adjo Radicani, the owner, and you know, people at the club are sort of invested in the area around the Billy Bremner statue. You see the tributes for Madeley, you know, and the players they've had there. Just, you know, it's one of the great English clubs. People talk about the sort of Don Revie era, and I know there were some Leeds talking about, you know, is Bielsa the new Don? That is a bit early. But in terms of his impact tactically and to the mood of the fans, he's transformed them.
Guardiola says he's the best coach in the history of the sport, Henry. So.
Why? Well, that's quite a praise. I know that a lot of people who look up to him. I think it's partly his meticulous element, the fact that he supposedly sleeps at the training ground. He spends his whole time sort of watching videos, knows everything about the opposition, knows absolutely everything about his own players, how to get the best out of them. You just look at those players and they've just been absolutely revitalised tactically, emotionally, in terms of their ambition, in terms of what they can do. Look, he's got to maintain this throughout the season, and the Championship is absolutely brutal. I mean, fighting your way through December, January, February and into March, and still sort of pushing for the top places then. But I just think he started so well, and when those Leeds fans are behind that team, which, to be fair, they invariably are, they travel in their numbers, huge support, even to pre-season games. But this, you saw, was it 34,000 yesterday? So the emotional engagement is there, but it's the tactical imprint that he's instilled on those players, which is most eye-catching. But
we have a generation of support of young football fans who don't really remember Leeds being a big club, don't know of Leeds being a big club, and we do. We remember great nights at Elland Road. Even when you drive past now the M621, you see that stadium, it's history, fantastic, massive club. But you can be out too long to the point where it takes you a long time to get that stature back. You sort of look with Wolves, how big a club Wolves is. But are they seen as a giant club now? Possibly not. And it's not easy. If Leeds don't get back, I feel, sort of this time, the next 2 or 3 years, you'll end up forgetting how big they are, I think. That's a danger.
I don't think you will when you look at the gates. I don't think you will when you go online, on social media, on Twitter. You won't if you pick up the local paper and realise just this huge obsession with Leeds United. I take your point about Wolves, but in fairness to Leeds, you can go back to a Champions League semi-final, 17, 18 years ago. You can go back to the title under Howard Wilkinson. So, but I just think it's one of these great, you can't forget about Leeds. Not sort of our generation, and I think subsequent generations who will have seen Wilkinson, who will have seen that great title-winning team, who will have seen that team of Woodgate and your mate Rio Ferdinand, and what they did in the Champions League. And then also, for many people, they are a lesson about mismanagement amongst the power brokers of the club, overspending, the goldfish, all those sort of stories. So, no, I think Leeds are very much embedded in English life.
They've had a few false dawns, haven't they, in recent seasons where you thought, hey, this could be the moment where they've fallen away again. But you sense with Bielsa, and they've done unbelievably well to get a manager of his stature. I'm not sure of the story of how he actually they came to get him and why he thought this was. But at the moment, it would seem that it's not going to be a false dawn.
They're talking about marketing Bielsa's bucket, aren't they? Is that right? What the fans were talking about yesterday. Can we get it into the shops? It'll do a storm. It's a good idea, I think.
What should Steve McLaren be perched on? QPR manager, scored 2 goals in the Championship. They've conceded 10, 7 of them yesterday at West Brom.
First of all, it wasn't an easy place to go into. They've had the FFP problems at QPR, so that was going to be difficult. But by any stretch of the imagination, it's a bad start. That's awful yesterday. Heard him doing his interview after the game last night, just talking almost as if they'd lost 2-0.
Yeah, well, I thought he'd won. I had to check the scoreline. It was
very much, we'll get the lads in tomorrow. We didn't see that coming. We'll work. We've got to work, put it right. That's a killer.
He did say it was unacceptable. He did apologise to the fans.
But you feel like this is only going one way, and I'm all for giving everybody a chance, but that looks very difficult to turn around when you're getting a thumping like that at this stage of the season, having lost your previous 2 as well.
Steve McLaren is a very good coach, but look, he's not a manager. How many times do we have to have this debate? We probably had it about 20 on this programme down the years.
We saw
it with England. He is an outstanding coach. We saw it in the treble season at Manchester United. He is a very good number 2 on the training ground working with people. But in terms of setting a team up, what did he say to them at half-time yesterday? Was it 1-1 at half-time, 7-1 final?
He's not a miracle worker either. I mean, and I think, 41 million were they fined for FFP. Clearly he's not going to have any money to spend there. It's going to end badly, I think, on that one.
Yeah, not well, 3 defeats in his first 3 games in the Championship. They did win in the Carabao Cup in the week. Quick word on Frank Lampard, because he got off to a winning start on the Friday night against Reading, but has lost his last 2 yesterday at Millwall. I suppose the Millwall fans would have enjoyed that down at the New Den yesterday. But how your impressions of him and how he settled into life as a manager? You mentioned Jody Morris earlier on. Of course, that's his first team coach alongside him at Derby. But how is Frank getting on?
Well, I went when he sort of got unveiled again, as we say. I went along and he
like an unveiling.
He spoke absolutely brilliantly, as Frank always does. I just think he's got some fantastic ideas. He's going to absolutely need time, and that squad needs investment. Probably 2 more transfer windows. But his impact will come because, you know, we've all talked. OK, look, there's a lot of sympathy and there's a lot of desire for Frank Lampard to do well because of, you know, how much we've admired him and we've all followed his career at club and country at close quarters. He's always been brilliant for us. The Football Rights Association, I think he might have been chairman then when he stood up and he spoke, and he's brilliantly. So I think there's a huge desire from the media for him to do well, but ultimately it is about results, it's about performances. He knows that they're not good enough this season. You can see what he's trying to do in terms of sort of the more creative way, but it's going to take time.
You wonder whether
he'll be given time.
You wonder whether someone like John Terry, who obviously he knows at Chelsea, who's kind of not got a club at the minute, and the impact John had on Aston Villa last year, you wonder whether, you know, it might be a wise move to get Terry in, you know.
Tough one, Derby, though, isn't it? Just because the way they fell away last season, and he hasn't really had a chance to invest a lot and develop that club. I think it is going to take time. But if Frank's somebody who feels like a manager, looks like a manager, talks like a manager, you just don't have any doubts he'll do well. It's just whether this was the right starting point for him. I think that's the difficult bit.
I think it's good for football that individuals like him and Steven Gerrard, we've seen at Rangers, are, despite lovely studios, wherever, I think it's great that they're actually going in and they're risking their reputation rather than sitting on a sofa somewhere.
Yeah, he's 3 games in as well. It's still very, very early days. OK, we're going to move on. We're going to talk, we could talk 10 minutes about Wilfried Zaha. He's just signed a new contract at Crystal Palace. He plays for Palace tomorrow night against Liverpool at Selhurst Park. More on that game, that's coming next. Welcome back. I want to talk big clubs briefly because Shaun mentioned what's the criteria for a big club, because I've got the attendance.
We've been through this so many times.
I love this game. I love this game. 19 Premier League result. I'm going to two attendances from 1994, opening day of the season. Okay, massive clubs, massive, huge history, pedigree, stature, players, history. They've got the lot. Chelsea, Norwich, opening day of the season, 1994. How many were at the Bridge?
Don't tell me, 20,000.
Yeah. You've seen about...
No, I haven't. But
no. OK, 23,000.
Yeah.
Steve, West Ham, opening day of the season, 1994. Against Leeds United.
Oh, I would say...
Massive club, Upton Park, fans crazy. They love their football down there.
25,000.
Yeah. Way off. You're way off. 18,000 down Upton Park. How many will be at the Coliseum tomorrow night, Henry? It's Palace against Liverpool. Big game.
You'll be there.
Yes, you'll be there. You will definitely be there. Say you'll be there.
I'm not going to be there. No, I got no.
Hold on a minute.
It is.
Stop the show.
It is. I'll tell you what, I remember the Palace-Liverpool game, the whole Cristanbul.
Oh, Cristanbul.
Cristanbul, which was huge. And you could argue, actually, tomorrow is, in a way, is putting Cristanbul and all, because this Liverpool team, with the investment that Klopp has made, with the continuity of the sort of Hendersons and Milners, with the new signings, they will push. It's an obvious thing to say, and everyone's been saying it. They will push Manchester City all the way, and this is a test for them. But you look at how Naby Keita has settled in so quickly in midfield. I really admire Klopp's transfer policy.
What is he?
Because he has gone out. He's got good characters in. Okay, Van Dijk's a leader. Keita is just that, someone who can wear the number 8 shirt, the Steven Gerrard shirt, and not be intimidated by it. And Keita's got that. The individuals like Salah as well. So, so many good players, and Daniel Sturridge playing well again. Milner, the Rock of Ages. The fact that he's still there, still hungry, still fit, great role model. teetotal, he's just tea. He's total tea. I mean, you know, that's his big. That is his big focus. So I just think that there's a real momentum. And again, coming back to the point we were talking about with Guardiola and the impact that he has on players, you can see that Klopp has that, how he makes players better. You look at Robertson, he's moved up a gear. You know, he always had that potential and he's playing superbly. So I just think tomorrow night we will remember Istanbul when Liverpool got, so what they were leading 2-0 was it?
3-0.
3-0 was it? And then they've faded.
Let's hope it's nothing like the opening day of the '94 season when Palace played Liverpool.
Yeah.
That was 6-1.
Yeah. Yeah.
Long time ago. Has Henry mentioned Keita in the centre of Liverpool's midfield? What does he offer? What's different?
Well, energy. He's more than you know. People
feels like a sort of calming influence on.
Well, people have compared him
midfield.
to Kante, but I think he's got more in his locker than Kante, to be honest.
Bold statement.
I think he has.
He's got goals. He's got the creativity.
Yeah, he's got goals. He's got creativity, and I think he's got a bit of everything. You know.
To be fair, Kante has been the best, most consistent player in this country in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
So let's leave that one to that side.
I'm not saying he's better at doing what Kante does best, but I think he's a more rounded player than Kante. He offers a bit more. I know Kante's being played in a slightly more forward role now, so maybe we'll see him developing that way. But Keita, I'm not saying he wears the 8. He's not Stevie G. Nobody ever will be. But you know, Klopp clearly could see what he would give the team because he was prepared to buy him a year to take him off the market, basically, to buy him a year before he actually got him. Yep. And you know, I know Klopp's been sort of, you know, ridiculed slightly for changing his transfer policy so dramatically from a time when he said he wanted to develop players, and even if he had the money, he wouldn't spend it, you know, because that's not his way. But I think he's realised that if he's going to compete with Man City, that has to be the way.
But don't you think he does develop players?
I
Don't you see players who go there, even for a substantial amount of money,
listen,
they're very soon worth even more because of his ability to inspire them, bring the best out of them?
Exactly. I'm not saying for a minute he's a tactical genius in the way that Pep is. I think Henry's touched on it there. What he does bring is the feel-good factor. Players love playing for him. You can see the way from the very off, he was on the pitch hugging them in his first couple of games, wasn't he? And I think that kind of touchy-feely kind of relationship with your players is the exact opposite to what Jose Mourinho has at Manchester United, and it works. He's the perfect fit for Liverpool. Yeah. But, you know, I go back and I get a bit of stick for it sometimes, but I do go back to the point there. He does need to win a trophy. For all the feel-good factor about Liverpool, for all the way that they're being talked up this season. To be fair, not by Klopp. Not by Klopp, I will make that clear. But there's a lot of expectation from the fans this year that this could be their year.
Yeah, it's building, isn't it?
It is building, and you know, rightly so, because they've got an absolutely magnificent squad now.
All eyes will be on Sellers Park tomorrow night for that game against Palace. Palace have just announced that Wilfried Zaha was signing a new contract. How important was it for Palace to keep their South London boy, but also their talismanic presence and the most influential, most important player, Shaun?
Well, it's a good investment from a Palace point of view because they're protecting that investment, which means if they do sell him on, and I still think they will sell him on eventually, they're going to get more money for him and be able to spend that again in the transfer market. And Hodgson's done well at Palace in the transfer market. And I think this game we're looking at tomorrow night, we're looking at it and thinking this is a really good test for Liverpool. Which, you know, you think Crystal Palace previously, you think, well, they'd probably win, even when Liverpool weren't as good as they are now. But this is one we're looking at and think, this would be really good. And like Zaha, for instance, if he's on his game, he's going to cause them trouble. Palace have a bit of confidence. They're not on no points. And then, look, you feel that, well, you can tell me there's a little bit of optimism around the place there, which I think is...
Yeah, well, being able to convince Zaha to sign a new contract, yeah.
And
given the type of clubs, the profile of the clubs that want to sign.
Why leave Crystal Palace now when you just look at the squad that Hodgson's building? I understand financially, longer term, wanting to play in the Champions League.
Because he's a player.
No, I understand that longer term, but in terms of this season, I think he can have a fantastic season for them. Compete for Football of the Year honours, PFA Player of the Year honours. I think he's got that. He should be absolutely at his peak. He's got the physical gifts, we know that. He's now got more of the tactical discipline, the decision-making, and he's really hurting teams.
But, you know, if he has a great...
We will see him tomorrow night in action for Palace against Liverpool at Selhurst Park. Guys, that's all we've got time for. Unfortunately, today we have been beaten by the clock. Thanks very much to the guys. Thanks to Shaun, to Steve and to Henry for joining us this morning.